I entered an abandoned room that locals warned me about. They said people who go inside never feel alone again. At first, nothing happened, until my shadow stopped copying me. It smiled, and then it moved before I did. Stay till the end because what followed me out was not human. I swear this story is real. Even now my shadow is not the same. Everyone in my town knows about the abandoned guest house at the edge of the old road. It sits there quietly, half hidden by broken trees and tall grass, like it's trying not to be noticed. Most people pass it without looking. Others speed up when they drive by. But there's one specific room inside that people whisper about. In low voices, not because it's locked, not because it looks dangerous, but because people who enter that room never feel alone again after they leave. They call it Room 209. According to locals, the room was sealed years ago after a guest vanished overnight. He had checked in alone, carried a single bag, and asked for a room far from the others. The next morning, staff found the door unlocked. Inside, everything was normal to normal. The bed was untouched. His bag was empty. His clothes were neatly folded on a chair, like he planned to return, but he never did. What scared them wasn't his disappearance. It was the wall, they say. His shadow was burned into it dark, stretched, and twisted like it had tried to crawl away without him. The wall was repainted. The room was closed. And soon, the entire guest house was abandoned. When I first heard this story, I laughed. I said shadows can't burn into walls. I said people exaggerate. Said it would make great content. I shouldn't have. Last month, curiosity won. I grabbed my camera, waited until dusk, and walked down that old road toward the guest house. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and red, and the building looked even more dead than I expected. Broken windows, peeling paint, absolute silence. I told myself I'd stay inside room 209 for just 5 minutes, just enough to record something creepy, just enough to prove it was fake. The door to the guest house creaked open without resistance. Room 209 was at the end of a narrow hallway. No lock, no warning sign. It's just a faded number on a wooden door. When I pushed it opened to icily, like it had been waiting. The room was small, dusty. The air smelled old and dry. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering softly, still working somehow. Even after all these years, then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. My shadow. It looked darker than it should have, thicker, sharper at the edges, like it didn't belong to the light in that room. The bulb flickered again, and for a moment my shadow seemed heavier, stared at it longer than I should have. Then I laughed it off. I told myself it was just bad lighting, just my imagination, just another horror story. So I stepped fully into the room, and that was my first mistake. The moment I stepped fully inside, the air changed. It wasn't sudden like a jump scare. It was slow and crushing, like the room itself was pressing down on my chest. Breathing felt heavier, thick like trying to inhale underwater. Every sound became dull, even the soft hum of the bulb above me. The walls caught my attention next. They were covered in faint scratch marks. Dozens of them. Some short, some long, some overlapping each other in messy patterns. They weren't deep enough to look violent, but there were far too many to be accidental. They circled the room at shoulder height, as if someone had been pacing, dragging their fingers along the wall for hours. My throat went dry. I turned back toward the door and closed it. Behind me, the sound echoed louder than it should have. Click. The bulb flickered once, then twice. That's when I noticed something terrifying. My shadow wasn't copying my movements properly at first. It was subtle, easy to ignore if you weren't looking directly at it. I lifted my hands slowly, watching the wall across from me. My arm rose, my shadow followed. A second late, I froze mid-movement. A nervous laugh escaped my mouth. I told myself it was just the old bulb, just the angle of the light playing tricks. On me. Old buildings do that. Horror stories make you imagine things, to prove it. I moved my head to the side. My shadow didn't move. It stayed completely still. The room felt colder instantly, like someone had opened a freezer door behind me. My heartbeat slammed in my ears. I stared at the shadow, waiting for it to correct itself. It didn't. My lips trembled as I whispered hello. The word barely left my mouth, and I swear, the shadow twitched. Not much, just enough to notice, like a muscle tightening under skin. A sharp chill ran down my spine. Goosebumps spread across my arms and neck. The bulb buzzed louder, flickering erratically now. My camera, still recording, suddenly started glitching, static crackling through the microphone, screen tearing and freezing like something invisible was interfering with it. I hadn't touched it. That's when I heard a voice, not from the walls, not from the ceiling, from directly behind me. It sounded exactly like me. Same tone, same breathing, the same voice. I hear every time I speak. It whispered calm and close, "Don't turn around." My entire body locked up. I could feel my own breath shaking, but the shadow on the wall. It was already turning toward me. I couldn't breathe. It felt like my lungs had forgotten how to work. My chest tightened, and every breath came out shallow and shaky. I turned my head slowly and looked toward the dusty mirror hanging on the opposite wall. My reflection stared back at me. It looked normal. My face was pale, eyes wide with fear, lips slightly open like I was about to speak. Everything about me looked exactly the same except, for one detail, the shadow beneath me was smiling. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't my imagination. The corners of its mouth were clearly stretched upward, forming a slow, twisted grin. Shadows aren't supposed to smile. My legs moved before my mind could catch up. I stepped back, heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. The shadow stepped forward, not matching me, not copying me, moving on its own. That's when panic completely took over. Survival instinct kicked in. I spun around and ran toward the door, my footsteps echoing loudly in the small room. I grabbed the handle with both hands and twisted it with all my strength. It didn't move. Locked. From the inside, my breath turned into desperate gasps as I slammed my shoulder against the door. The wood didn't even shake. Behind me, the room felt colder and naturally cold, like something had stolen all the warmth. I turned slowly. The shadow was no longer the same shape. It was stretching longer, thinner, peeling itself off the floor and crawling up the wall like thick black smoke molded into the shape of a human. Its arms dragged across the surface, leaving the wall darker wherever it touched. Then it spoke. The voice didn't echo. It didn't sound distant. It came from everywhere at once. You stood in my place. Now I stand in yours. The bulb above me shattered with a sharp crack. The lights went out. Total darkness swallowed the room. I couldn't see my hands. I couldn't see the walls. Couldn't even see my own shadow anymore. That's when I felt it. Something cold wrapped around my ankles, not hands, not arms. Something flat, something thin. Like pressure without weight, like a shadow touching me. I screamed and kicked, but it didn't let go. The cold sensation crawled upward, tightening around my legs, pulling me backward across the floor. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, louder than my own screams. Then, without warning, the bulb flickered back on. The room snapped into view. I was alone. Almost I looked down. My shadow was no longer attached to my feet. It was standing in the corner of the room, perfectly still, stretched across the wall, watching me. I don't remember how I got out. One moment, I was standing in that room, staring at something that looked like my shadow but wasn't. And the next, my mind went blank. No sound, no light, no sense of time. Felt like someone had pulled a curtain over my thoughts. The next clear memory I have is running. I was sprinting down the old road outside the guest house, gasping for air like I hadn't breathed in minutes. My legs burned, my chest hurt, and my heart felt like it was going to tear itself out of my body. Behind me, I could hear something fall and shatter. When I finally stopped and turned around, I realized it was my camera. It lay smashed on the road. Screen cracked, lens broken, like it had been thrown. What? I don't remember dropping it. I don't remember leaving the building at all. Slowly, my breathing calmed. I looked down at the ground beneath my feet. My shadow was there again at first. I felt relief. I told myself it was over. Whatever happened inside room 209 had stayed there. But that feeling didn't last long. Something about the shadow felt wrong. When I raised my hand, it copied me instantly. Instantly. No delay. No natural movement. Perfect. Like it already knew what I was going to do before I did it. When I stopped walking under the streetlight. My shadow didn't soften or fade the way shadows normally do at night. It stayed dark. Solid. Almost. Heavy that night at home, I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. Every time I turned off the lights, I felt watched. When I finally worked up the courage to look, my shadow was still there, pressed faintly against the wall, even though the room was completely dark. That shouldn't be possible. Over the next few days, I noticed more things. Sometimes my shadow moved even when I didn't. It would lean slightly toward the wall, like it was being pulled by something on the other side. Other times it wouldn't appear at all, not in sunlight, not under bright lamps, not even when I stood directly under a light source. And sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I'd see it shift, just a small movement, twitch, a step. But when I turned my head, it was perfectly still, pretending nothing had happened, like it was learning when to move and when to hide. I never went back. To room 209, I don't need to, because I know the truth now. Whatever lived in that room didn't want to be alone anymore, and I'm scared that one day soon, my shadow won't follow me at all. Now I'm telling you this as a warning, not as a story, not as entertainment, but as something I wish someone had told me before I ever stepped into that room. If you ever enter a place where the silence feels alive, where it presses against your ears and makes your thoughts louder, leave immediately. Don't wait. Don't investigate. Don't tell yourself you're being dramatic. Some places don't want visitors. They want replacements. And pay attention to the shadows. Shadows aren't just the absence of light. They follow rules. They copy. They obey. They exist only because you exist. The moment a shadow starts acting like it has its own intentions, something has already gone very wrong. If one day you notice your shadow moving before you do, if it stands still when you walk, even for a second, if it stretches in ways your body doesn't, don't ignore it. Fear exists for a reason. That uneasy feeling in your chest isn't imagination. Your instincts begging you to survive. And if you ever see your shadow smile when you don't, run, because that means it's watching you closely, learning how you move, how you breathe, how you hesitate. It's memorizing you, one moment at a time. People think possession is loud, violent, obvious. They're wrong. Real possession is quiet, patient. It doesn't rush. It waits until you stop paying attention, till you trust that everything is normal again, until you stop checking the wall behind you. Even now, as I record this, I keep glancing down between sentences. My shadow is there, but it isn't behaving the way it used to. It leans slightly to the side, like it's being pulled by something I can't see. Sometimes it lags behind my movements. Sometimes it reacts just a fraction too early, like it knows what I'm about to do. At night, I sleep with a small light on. Not because I'm afraid of the dark, but because I'm afraid of what shows up in the light. I've started avoiding mirrors, avoiding corners, avoiding standing still for too long. Because I've noticed something terrifying. The less I move, the more my shadow does, and I'm scared that one day soon, I'll wake up and it won't be attached to me anymore. That it'll be standing on its own, watching, waiting for the moment I finally look away. So if you take anything from this story, remember this. If your shadow ever stops following you, it's because it doesn't need to anymore. And by then, it might already be too late if this story made you look twice at your own shadow. Make sure you like this video so it knows you're still here. Subscribe for more real horror stories they don't want you to hear. And turn on notifications because the next story might feel even closer. Comment below if you've ever noticed something strange in the dark. But don't comment too late at night. And remember, if your shadow ever stops following your run,